Hello everybody, this is Barry Johnson. Welcome back to Studio Talk. Today I'm going to give you a brief overview of my experience with the UC1 controller that is made by Solid State Logic to control their channel strip as well as their bus compressor. But before we get started, I'd like to give Solid State Logic some feedback. I have never in my life experienced a more frustrating process to download demos in my life. A month ago, before I even considered the UC1, I had heard a lot of things about their plugin, so I wanted to download the demo. And man, was that a complete mess. I mean, it is so illogical, it's absolutely ridiculous. I don't know who designed that, but you need to get somebody else and get that fixed because it is just not right. There was even a user after I'd navigated through the whole thing, there was a user that was talking about over at a popular forum where SSL tends to stay engaged on the subject of their UC1. And he was trying to get to the demo, but he couldn't for the life of him figure it out. So, I thought, well, man, I'll just log back in and look through the process and answer his question, because the question was, did it require an iLock? And an iLock account, and I just couldn't remember whether it did or not. Ultimately, it did, but I didn't know that at the time. And man, I could not get back in. No matter how hard I tried, I could not get back in. Even finding the downloads is a nightmare. If you're starting from scratch, okay, and you're just trying to download something, even trying to figure out how to download it is a complete mess. And you never know when you're clicking that button if anything's actually happening or not. You could end up clicking 10 times when it actually did something in the first one, but there's nothing that gives you any expectation whatsoever that your first click even worked. Okay, so it was terrible. I also ran into the same troublesome problem with registering the unit. It was not user-friendly at all. Now, to put things into perspective, in case you think I'm just some computer idiot, I'm not. I'm the guy who all of my friends call when they've got a problem with either a Windows PC or their Mac. I'm the techie guy. I'm the guy that's been living and loving this stuff for decades. I eat this stuff up, And so if I have a hard time navigating, I can't even imagine how difficult it is for everyone else. So Solid State Logic, you need to get your butt in gear and get this stuff fixed, because what you're doing simply does not work for the user. Okay, so how did I even think about this whole UC1 to begin with? It wasn't my intention originally. After I got through my hurdle, I wanted to download their plugins because I'd actually watched another video of another YouTuber out there demonstrating their plugins. And I thought, man, that sounds great. But I'm always suspicious of YouTubers doing their demos because I'm not so sure if they're in bed with the manufacturer or not. I've got issues with that across the board. And I promise you, I may talk about gear and I may give my personal recommendations on things, but I will never, never, ever collaborate with any manufacturer. It's important that I remain honest and sincere with everything that I ever say. Whether any of you ever watch it or not, I can't speak to that. So finally, after that arduous task of actually finally downloading the demo, oh, here's another thing before I forget. Hey, SSL. I went to download the demo of just the channel strip and the bus compressor. Nowhere in that, throughout that process, did it tell me I was downloading a demo for every one of your plugins. Why did you do that? I didn't even realize I had done that until 5 days before the expiration, when I actually went in to try to figure out how to help that other guy on the forum, and I happened to go to my iLock and I see all these authorizations. I'm like, for goodness sakes, don't you want to sell these things at some point? I mean, just about every other manufacturer lets you cherry pick which ones you want to demo at a time. Who has time to demo 10 or 12 plugins in 30 days and give it a true evaluation? I'm sorry, I can't do that. So again, that whole process is really messed up. Okay, let's move that aside. That rant is over. Okay, so ultimately, as I stated before, I saw this demo, a suspect of the nature of it. So I said, you know what? I want to get this in my studio with my monitors and my ears, and I want to evaluate these plugins. Historically, it actually used the Waves SSL emulation, and I've also used the Slate SSL emulation. I actually prefer the Waves to the Slate. I know all kinds of hate's coming for me right now because everybody likes to hate Waves. But I was actually satisfied at that point with the Waves version of it. Okay. Then I pulled up SSL's version. Now, just because SSL makes a great console, and everyone knows they do, they make incredible hardware, always have, the envy of all hardware manufacturers when it comes to that. You know, their only real true competitor was ever Neve, and that's a serious competitor, by the way, but let's don't get going down that road. So ultimately, I pulled up these plugins. Oh, I'm sorry, my point was, just because they make great hardware doesn't mean they have the ability to make great plugins. So I was even suspect of that. Even though I'd known a lot about their Duende platform in the past, which is now kind of defunct, but a lot of us didn't get to try that because you had to buy the hardware to try the plugin. So a lot of people never got a chance to try that, including this guy. And I'm sure it was probably great, but I never knew that. So anyway, I finally got the demo downloaded, got it installed, pulled up Pro Tools, took every plugin off a session that I had, and put the channel strip across every channel and started to mix and EQ. I was floored. I honestly will tell you, I was floored. That channel strip blows Waves out of the water. I mean, I want to take that Waves plugin and put it under my foot and go stomp, stomp, stomp. You're useless now because now my eyes are open. This thing's freaking great, okay? The bus compressor, it was great. It didn't shake and mold me as much as compared to the Waves version as the channel strip did. Okay, it's great, don't get me wrong. But ultimately, the channel strip blew me away. I had not heard something so smooth and creamy, and I understand that all these different plugins are modeled after different versions of their consoles, which is how I think they kind of get away without truly getting an apples-to-apples comparison, which I think is bogus and a bunch of nonsense. If you're going to make something to compete with it, make things that are equal, and that means Wave should have tried to do what SSL did, because I think SSL came up with the Duende before they came out with theirs. I don't know, but that doesn't really matter. So, to say the least, I fell in love with the sound of that, okay? And so I was at a point where I said, you know, I'm going to buy that plugin. Now, if you've watched my video, I've done a video on how many channel strips do you need? How many EQs do you need? If you've not watched that video, I highly recommend you go back and watch that. And I may be somewhat a little bit hypocritical in this when I say I bought this one, but I'm going to tell you right now, I plan to live with that plugin. I plan to live with it. And I plan to keep it across all my channels and work exclusively with that for the foreseeable future, okay? I want to really, really, really give this thing a go because I was that impressed with it, okay? So, by the time you look at the cost of the plugins, the channel strip is like, I think, 330 bucks. I think it's 329, but I'm going to round things up. 330 bucks, okay? The bus compressor is 330 bucks. So if you're going to get both those things, you're out of your pocket for 660 bucks. Stop. I know it. That's a lot of freaking money. I get it. Trust me, I get it. I don't think I've ever spent that much money on a single plugin in my life. Ever, ever, ever. Okay? The only thing pushes that cost-wise are some of the things that Universal Audio comes out with, but at the end of the day, with Universal Audio, you know they're going to come up with their sales, so patience is king when it comes to Universal Audio. But their retail's not that far off on many of their plugins, or at least historically, that has been the case, okay? But still, these are expensive plugins, but I'll be honest with you, I was ready to shell out that cash. And then I didn't even think about this when I did it. You know, I said, you know, I've got a D command back there. I mean, I can control those SSL plugins, no problem. I mean, that's probably the best controller I've ever used in my life for controlling plugins. It is so easy, so amazing, okay? So I don't need the controller. I'm telling you right now, I don't need it, all right? Now, I looked and I was curious and I thought, you know, let me order this thing from Sweetwater. Let me check it out and see. I never even registered the thing because I still had the demos I was working with. So as I'm experimenting with the control surface, I'm actually using the demo plugins. So then I started looking at it, and I'll be honest with you, because I've got a D command, I was looking to probably return the controller. As fantastic as it is, and I'll talk about that a little more because it is a fantastic controller, okay? As fantastic as it is, I simply didn't need it. Is it better and more intuitive? Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. Because if you've watched my video on control surfaces, you know that muscle memory is very, very important, and that really enhances it. But it's going to kind of get in the way of my control surface, and so I've still got to work through that challenge. So at the end of the day, I'm keeping it. I'm keeping it. Does that surprise you with what I just said? It probably should. Well, let me tell you my logic. That controller back there, and I'm going to go back and grab it in a second. Let me just do it right now. Boom, boom, boom. Here we go. Let me unplug this thing. Okay, let me unplug this bad boy. This little bad boy right here, let me try to get that right, and I'll put it under this beautiful mug of mine so you guys can keep looking at it. But at the end of the day, this unit right here comes with both of those plugins. It comes with the channel strip and the bus compressor. How much did I say each one cost? $330. So if you buy both of them, how much is it? $660. Gray, you just got an A on your math quiz. How much is this, which includes the plugins? $850. You get where I'm going? Understand where I'm going? Shoot, man, it would be smart just to buy this thing, keep the plugins if I didn't want it, and then sell this for more money. Not more than I paid for it, but like I could probably sell it for $400 to people who already own both those plugins. Because they're now SOL, and now that once people connect the dots with what I just said, and sorry, this may be ruining it for all you SSL current channel strips and bus compressor owners, because once people connect the dots, they're going to kind of realize that you're going to have a hard time selling those things, because at less than $200 more, that's what you're paying for the controller. That's what you're paying for it. So it makes it a no-brainer at that point. I mean, you'd be crazy not to go ahead and get it. But again, I could sell it, make a couple $100 profit, but I'm not going to do that, at least not anytime soon, because I'm going to see how I can work it in my workflow. I've already started looking about sliding trays and things like that, where I can push it out of the way when I want it out of the way and then slide it back over so it doesn't get in the way of everything else on my control surface. But I don't know. Maybe that will work. Maybe it won't work. I don't know. So let's talk about this unit here. Okay. If in case you're wondering, I've got a display right there where I can see what the camera's showing, so I got to kind of do that and be able to figure out, get it level. Okay, so here's the unit. This thing is built like a tank. I mean, it is solid as a rock. Okay, I'm covering up my shotgun microphone. It's solid as a rock. All of the knobs, they're all fantastic. They're all very smooth. Everything's great. All the buttons work great. Look, I'm not going to give you a review of the plugin. You can go out and download the demo if you can ever figure out how to. And at the end of the day, this works as you would expect it to. You've got a little LCD screen here that shows you your whatever, like if you're going 10 dB boost or gain, it's going to show it down there. If your ratio is changing, it's going to display that down there. So that's very intuitive in case you want to get precision on that. Otherwise, you would just eye it like you would if you're working on a console, because you wouldn't have that on a console, right? And so you can go through presets, it controls presets and everything else like that. There's this software that comes with it called 360. Now I'm going to set this down for a second, and I'm going to give some advice to SSL on their 360 application that goes with it. And basically you guys can look that up, but the 360 just shows all of the channels that you have the SSL channel strip on, and you got a kind of a bird's eye view of all that in case you need to look at it. Kind of looking at it to me kind of defeats the purpose, because isn't that the purpose of this? So you don't ever have to look at the screen. But anyway, one of the challenges going back, when you push the button on there to bring up 360, and then you go back, let's say you're playing something on your DAW, and that's DAW to most of you if you haven't figured that out, and you just want to stop playback, but you don't have a control surface, okay? There's no way to do that on this. And there's no way to do that within the 360 app. It can't control your DAW. Mine happens to be Pro Tools, okay? So what you have to do is minimize 360, then grab your mouse, and then click somewhere in the application, just so your Mac now, or your Mac or your Windows computer now knows where to. I assume this is Windows compliant. Yes, it is. I remember seeing that. So, but you've got to select your DAW just so you can hit your space bar to stop playback. Well, what happens if you start hitting things you don't want to hit? What happens if you were in a window that, like your edit window and not your mix window, when you go back in and you accidentally do something, you grab a clip or something, just nudge it ever so slightly out, and you just don't pay attention? That needs to be resolved somehow, some way. I don't know how you're going to do it, but you need to do that, whether it just automatically chooses whatever the previous app was and automatically goes back to it when you minimize it, but that's a pain in the butt. Either that or figure out a way to have a button on this thing, control playback. I'm just talking about start and stop. I'm not talking about full transport capabilities, okay? So this probably seems a little weird when you're watching it, but my camera battery ran out, so I didn't want to start all over, so I'm going to do this part all over. Okay, so one gripe I've got with this particular unit is I want to ask you guys, anybody out there see a power switch? Do you see a power switch there anywhere? I know I'm having a hard time getting it focused, but at the end of the day, no, there's no power switch, okay? There's just a USB-C connection and the power, connector. There's no switch to turn it on or off, so it's on all the time. I don't know about you, but I don't like leaving my gear on all the time. So I'd love to understand their logic for why they did this, and there's probably no harm to it, but I don't want my electric bill going any higher, and maybe it's just marginal, but at least it should be addressed, and I couldn't find anything about that anywhere. Now, there's some pieces of gear in my studio I leave on. My monitors back there I leave on, and my studio monitors, and then also as well as my computer. I've never turned my computer off unless I have to restart it for some reason because I've had an issue of some kind, which is incredibly rare. So other than that, it stays on. I've been doing that for decades, never had a problem with it. But everything else I turn off. Main reason I turn it off, it gets hot in this room. Man, you should be in this room right now with all these freaking lights going around. It gets hot in here quick. So I got to shoot these videos quick, which I didn't start it all over. But like I said before, man, this thing is laid out. I'm trying to get it orientated for you. This thing's laid out really well. I mean, really fantastic. Everything about it, I really, really love. It's laid out well. There is a question that some people have, and that's scrolling through, being able, in other words, if you select a track in your DAW, let me just set this thing down. Hang on. If you select a track in your DAW, that DAW, okay, I don't want, maybe I need to stop saying that, but it doesn't follow that on this controller. Now, I hope they resolve that at some point because that is kind of nice. But then again, if you're using this, well, if you have super large sessions, I mean like really, really big ones, like over 30 tracks or so, I can see that being a problem, okay? I can see it being cumbersome. But at the end of the day, if it's 30 or under, I had zero problem. I mean, you skim through it so quickly. It's so great. And if you need to refer to where you are with it, you got the 360 app up there. But that only comes up on channels that you have the plug-in on. So if you're going to put it on a channel, you put it on everything to make that flow easy. At least that's probably what I would do. I said I was going to do that anyway. But anyway, just zooming through that was a piece of cake. Now, you probably already orientate your sessions when you do them, aka you do your drums in a certain order, then your bass, maybe then your keys, then your guitars, and vocals, and background vocals, and so on, and so on, and so on. So it's easier, obviously, if you maintain some consistency, but I would argue that's easy whether you're using that. That's better whether you're using that thing or not. So at the end of the day, is that controller great? Yes. Are you going to experience a few bugs with it? Yes. I've already experienced a few bugs, but come on, this thing's been out less than a month. You got to expect that somehow, somewhere, sometime. There are a few things when I'm going between the 360 app and scrolling back and forth, every once in a while it'll lock up. Now, I tried desperately to figure out exactly what was causing it, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't find that common denominator that ultimately where I could force it to kind of do that every time. So I'm not so sure what caused that to happen, but it was very infrequently when it did happen, and I have no doubt ultimately they'll get that fixed. Updating firmware was a piece of cake. You'd want to do that with any piece of gear. The minute you get it, you want to update that firmware. That was real easy on it. The controls are very intuitive, very well laid out. The 360 app that you use is very well laid out, other than that bug I talked about before where if you don't want to stop playback, that's a pain in the butt. And I'm telling you, that seriously is a pain in the butt, almost to the point where you just wouldn't want to use the 360 app at all. Okay, that's one way to resolve that issue. Another issue I have with the plugin itself, and this is a big, big, big issue. For example, when I do it on my laptop, it takes up a third of the screen because it's not scalable. You cannot scale it. In other words, you can't make that plugin size be a different size. It is what it is. And so if you've got a large monitor, that's a non-issue. But even still, That's a lot of real estate that it's taking up. I don't get why they do that. To me, that makes no sense, because once you get used to using this thing, the only reason you would ever even look at the plugin versus look at the controller is if you're just insecure about what you're doing. You want to know what you're doing. It's turning buttons on that thing. So, and it does them well. So I would say from a plug-in controller, even though this only thing controls one or two things, did I say that? Two things, ladies and gentlemen. It controls two plugins and nothing else. I mean, nothing else. If they were just selling this controller, if I owned the plugin and say, hey, buy this controller 4-hour plugins, no freaking way I'd do that. No way, unless it was $200. But if it was, the price of a lot of controllers, no way, no, not going to do it. Wouldn't fly in this boy's camp. But because it's only two plugins, how much use can you get out of? You got to really be married to those who wouldn't want to use the bus compressor? But you don't want to be married, or you may not want to be married to one single plugin that you use the majority of your time for your EQ and compression, or at least your starting point for those things. You're obviously going to use other things around it to shape it, to give it some character and things like that outside of that, which is fine. I think that's great. But so you got to understand that when you're doing it. And so, but I'm going to give it a shot because I was so impressed with that daggone EQ. I'm going to do it. Okay. I'm going to do it. And so how long I stay with it, I guess we'll see. How much I love it a year from now, we'll find out. I guess maybe I should do a follow-up at some point. But now if you own their control surface, SSL's control surface, and you pair it with this, oh man, whew. If you're going to use a control surface, and again, you can watch my video on control surfaces, whether you think they're right for you or not. But if you're going to use a control surface and you're going to use that, then go with the SSL version, because I've heard nothing but good things about that as well. There are a few things like any beginning of anything they've got to work out, but that stuff comes in time with every single piece of gear that we buy these days that that works with software and things. Okay, so. At the end of the day, is my recommendation for it? Absolutely yes. It is, if you are willing to spend that much money for those plugins. And so would I encourage you to jump off the ledge and just go straight into it without trying those plugins? No. No. Make sure that you see things the way I do. Just because I say I like it, that should not mean anything whatsoever to you. You and you alone have to make the decisions whether or not you find value in that extremely expensive pair of plugins. Extremely expensive. Now you can justify that in your head and you can say, well, maybe I'm not paying $330 each for it. Maybe in my head I could say I'm paying $850 for that. So maybe in my head I'm going to pay $450 for the controller and I'm paying $400 for the plugins, $200 each. So therefore I can justify buying it. Well, you can tell yourself whatever you want, but that's not the case, okay? So anyway, I'm impressed. I really am impressed. It is a great control surface for controlling plugins, for those two plugins for sure. I mean, absolutely fantastic. And so from my perspective, I think it's a good buy only and only if you absolutely love that channel strip. Now, I'm not talking about just the bus compressor. I wouldn't buy it just for that, obviously. You got to love that channel strip. It's got to be something you feel like you can live with, at least on a high percentage of your tracks, okay? So kind of think about that. So anyway, so that kind of wraps it up. I ended up going longer than I planned to with this thing, but I hope I've given you some perspective, some things to think about to maybe affect your potential buying decision, or maybe walk you off the ledge and say, hey, maybe that's not right for me. Maybe I shouldn't do that. But only you can make that decision for you. Don't ever just take some YouTuber's word for something, whether it's me or anybody else. I'm not a YouTuber yet. I'm just a guy in his home studio that's just like you, okay? I'm on my journey just like you are, okay? So let's do this together. So that's wrapping this bad boy. Oh, by the way, don't let me forget, liking, there's that thing down there, like, subscribe, notification bell really helps me out. Want to grow this channel so maybe I can make a couple $100 a month and buy more gear. That'd be great, right? I know you'd like that too. So anyway, you know what you can do? Until next time, well, you just have yourself a great day. See, I got my little app, just in case you're curious. See, this bad boy, it's a nice little app. You know what it's for? I got this little thing over here. This is what I used to use when I did remote location videography. Okay. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to hit that shotgun. I'm sorry, shotgun Mike. Didn't mean to hit you. But this is my little Zoom F6. This is a neat little bad boy. I like this thing. It takes up to 6 little inputs, XLR inputs. battery powered, battery USB. You can control. You can charge it off a USB backup battery charge source. You can put AA batteries in there if you want to, and then also you can use a Sony battery pack. Goes right back there, and that thing will last all day long on one charge. I mean, all day. Trust me, this thing has been put through the ringer. I mean, I was doing video for a show I was working on. And I was doing that 10, 12 hours a day, 4 days a week, and this thing had no problem. I mean, the battery barely even dented after that. So, pretty cool device. Maybe I should talk about this sometime. I don't recommend this for studio use. I mean, you could use it if you wanted to, but if you need to do remote stuff and you need to have battery stuff, hey, good thing. So, anyway. You want a PC built? I'm the guy that's probably going to do it for you for free. You want a Macintosh built? Well, not a Macintosh, but you want to get, damn it, to hell. That's just not right. I didn't say the right thing. I got to get this right from now. You know what I mean? Okay,